Welcome, beautiful people, to our Tuesday night chat. I'm Kelly Wilkins from My Self Reliance, and tonight we have a special guest with us. I'm very excited to share this topic with you all about community. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. Really so excited to be here tonight.
So before we jump over to Nicole's topic, I just wanted to let everyone know that if you are coming along to this Saturday to our first aid course, it's in Rouse Hill. It's first aid with natural home remedies. So love you all to get along to that. It's really a super, one of those important topics that everybody should know, how you can deal with bites and anaphylaxis and burns and cuts and stings, all kinds of our lovely Australian flora and fauna who want to attack us at times, and really learn what to do with natural home remedies with that. So that's 11 o'clock at Rouse Hill, and we're getting ready for our festival in October. So this is where we're going to have a camping festival in Kenthurst. It's 3 days. It's come along. You can have glamping options, and we're going to have speakers and workshops, drumming, circle, ice baths, yoga, barn dance. But really, it's all about learning to take care of ourselves within our communities, our food, source resources, our security, and really preparing ourselves for the future in the best way. And then we're going to wrap it up at the end with a networking exercise inside of our communities. So really developing really what Nicole has developed over there in the Northern Beaches. Now, Nicole, I've invited her along tonight to share with you all something really special that I spoke about in the summit, which was about getting together in your communities to create that strong network where people are really supportive and looking after each other. And well, I was just delighted when I came across Nicole and her team who've been doing just that. So Nicole McMurray is otherwise known as Mrs. Nutritious. I love that name. Has been leading nutrition classes, small groups, workshops, corporates to people, really helping them, guiding them along this beautiful food and nutrition journey. And also in her background in marketing and in home decorating, would you call that, Nicole? And yeah. How you can tell, because look at her beautiful home, and how all that we're talking about, how all those skills that we've developed over the years kind of start to come to fruition when we get together in these times, and really lead out with what's really important. So thank you so much for being here, Nicole, and sharing with everybody. I've had a little glimpse into what the Northern Beaches are doing over there. So would you like to introduce yourself and elaborate for us on who you are and the kinds of things that you've been up to?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Well, firstly, I'll say that I'm just one of the group. So I'm the one that's present on the screen tonight, but there's many of us who work to make this community what it has become over the last 2 years. So there's sort of 4 of us who spend a lot of time coordinating the group. And then we have now close to 90 sort of members on our little database, but we have a really regular gathering of around 30 people who are the sort of core of the group. And some of those beautiful faces are on the screen and here with us tonight. So we sort of started this group almost 2 years ago now, and it started really, really informally with a friend of mine, Vicky, who I'd known for many years, walking during those crazy years when we could only walk, and thinking, wouldn't it be lovely if your sort of like-minded friends could get together with my like-minded friends, because there aren't that many of us all up. So why don't we meet down at the beach next Friday night? So that happened, and we decided that everyone we invited, we'd say to them, if you have a friend who's feeling, outside the norm at the moment and is lonely, bring them along as well. So those meetings started really very casually down at Clevel Beach, and we did that for a number of months on a Friday night until we got to the point sort of 6 months later where we actually started to form a formal group. And here we are sort of 2 years later, now 90 members. So our group, I guess, could be captured by saying we really focus on just creating a little bit of a more beautiful world in our patch of northern beaches. And that's a phrase that comes from Charles Eisenstein, which is one of the guys that we really put up as one of our thought leaders, I suppose, for our group. We really focus on person and in-person connection. So our group isn't focused around Facebook friends or online friends. A lot of us were friends to start with, as you can gather by the way the group started. So there was already a level of in-person connection. And geographically, we're really all quite close together. There's a lot of us within a 5-kilometre radius, and pretty much all of us are within a 10-kilometre radius, I would say. So it's in-person introduction to the group. So any events that we do, if you're not already a group member, we ask the group member to bring that new person along in person and say hello, and we meet them face to face. And then slowly, as we build a rapport, that person, if they feel aligned with our group, their email gets added onto our little database, and hence the community grows. So it's grown very slowly and very organically. And naturally, we have people who come along and maybe don't come back again, but most of our group, as I said, we've got a very strong core of about 30 and then up to 90 on our database. And it's interesting, we've discovered, initially we sort of thought, after 12 months, maybe someone who hasn't come along to one of the meetings that we have, we should take them off our database. But we've found that just by having conversations with people, that they'll say to you, I love getting your newsletter. It's so beautiful and so affirming to know there's this stuff happening. There seems to be a level of safety that they feel that there is a network there if they should need it, even if they can't come along and take part in our events right now. So that's been, the way our group has organically grown. We sort of focus on to be as analog as we possibly can, which is quite strange in a digital world. And here we are tonight on a digital screen, and this is the gift of technology, isn't it, when it can be used for good. But we do have a Telegram channel, which is how we communicate some of our information, but we always replicate that on email and wherever we can, actually in person. So Kelly will show us some images later tonight of some of our workshop events, and everything's written up on a whiteboard on big pieces of butcher's paper, and we love our clipboards and our little sign-up sheets. So we try and be as analog as we can and as in-person as we can. And that's always a bit of a, we call it the tight loose problem. It's always like, are we being too weird about this, or do we just not worry and we just put it out there? So it's a forever changing situation. We sort of focus on natural health, on localization. That's a really big part of our group, trading within local businesses, supporting local businesses and each other, and becoming more self-reliant. And I guess that's what's attracted us to Kelly and your beautiful group, is the workshops that you do and encouraging people to become more self-reliant. And that's something we're really working towards. Though essentially, I think the first year of our group, looking back, was all about cementing our relationships and becoming really friendly neighbours, because you can't rely on someone when you don't really know them. So those long times for people to chat and connect and weave together and drink gin together and all those fun things that we've done, that's created the fabric now, hopefully, to allow us to actually build our skill base a little bit more and actually become more self-reliant.
Beautiful. So you've had lots of different events and learnings together. What's some of the things that you've done? You meet monthly, or is that how often?
Yeah, generally we meet monthly on a formal sort of basis. So we tried out a couple of different locations in the early days. So our actual first event was here at my home. So we've done some home events. Then we tried out a couple of council owned premises, which were really, really good. But there was just something about the hierarchy and the paperwork involved in council that didn't feel naturally aligned for us. And then serendipitously, we came in touch with a lovely young family who are involved in one of our local churches, which is not a well-utilised venue. It's a fabulous little venue. And suddenly we had a lovely entry point into this beautiful community location. So it's your old-fashioned church hall with the daggy carpet and the daggy paintings, but a big old kitchen in there and plenty of space for us to meet and gather. So that's our once a month location. And then over the course of the last 18 months, our extra activities have changed. So we first started off by introducing an event called a Friday Social, which was initially weekly and then fortnightly. And it was basically just getting together at one another's home. So we'd nominate a home for it to be at each Friday evening. And it was drinks and nibbles and just a chance to get together. And that has now sort of morphed into a Saturday morning event, which is more of a gardening club, more of a hands-on event. And we aimed to do that fortnightly. At the moment, it's sort of monthly. We don't have a good rhythm with that gardening club at the moment in terms of timing. But that's our meetings. And then we've sort of had some extra community events too. So Kelly came with us last Saturday on a farm tour. We went up to the Central Coast, which is about an hour and a half from where we're located here in Sydney, to what would be one of our most local rural areas, to visit a regenerative farm. So those sort of events are ad hoc. They're not in our normal sort of schedule. Film nights we've hosted for not just our community, but for the greater Northern Beaches community. And once again, they're ad hoc events. But generally, once a month for our regular gatherings, once a fortnight for the other stuff. And then the core four of us, we initially, for the first 18 months really, we met every week to make this happen. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of organisation, a lot of thinking, a lot of follow-up, a lot of connections. So we would meet a weeknight, Tuesday, Wednesday night, every week. This year, we've tried to bump that back to once a fortnight because it's just a lot of time out of your family life and your existing work life. And most of us work full or part-time, so it's tricky to sort of squeeze this in as well. So we've bumped that back to once a fortnight. So in terms of regularity, that's how we've structured our group. But we recognise that it's so important if you're forming something like that to meet really regularly, because that's how communication and connections happen. And if it was just once a month, not everyone can come on that once a month meeting night. So it could be 2 months before they see the group, which is not good for the consistency and for getting traction on practical issues. So that's why we introduced the more regular Friday socials, the gardening clubs.
Beautiful. And so do you have some smaller groups who you had someone in charge of gardening, or you've done some other, you had guest speakers as well?
Yeah, okay. So some of our types of events, so I guess I could sort of link that down into a few different sort of themes. So I mentioned we've had a couple of film nights, so that works really well for our community. Our community is very obviously attracted to a film. So our very first film that we showed, which was the first official gathering for the group, was a film called The Economics of Happiness, which some of you guys may have heard of. So it was produced by an amazing organisation called Local Futures, which is run by a brilliant lady called Helena Norberg Hodge. She has been in this space of localization for about 30 years, and now finally she's seeing some traction in what she's been chatting about. So we showed her film here, and then we've also shown a David Martin film called The American Re-Evolution. One of our core members had a prior sort of friendship and working relationship with David Martin, so we were actually able to get that film, which was really awesome, and we opened that up to the greater community. So film nights work really well, and for us they're a lovely way, a non-confrontational way of expanding some really nice themes into the greater community. So films have worked well for us. With this year we've tried the concept called harvest dinners, which is really lovely. So with my sort of foodie background, I said, how lovely would it be if each season we could all celebrate the harvest of local food, whatever that may be. So our most recent one was when Kelly was with us last month, and it was the winter harvest dinner. So everyone who comes along goes to some extra special effort, and they bring some beautiful food with them, something representative of their family or their background for the season. And we basically have a huge potluck dinner. We dress all the tables beautifully themed to the season, and we have a really inspirational guest speaker. So our most recent guest speaker was Patria King, and she runs the Quest for Life Foundation here in New South Wales in Bundanoon. Patria, if you're not familiar with her, has been nominated for Australian of the Year every year for the last 20 years. She's an extraordinary woman who's lived an extraordinary life herself and has opened a centre for people who are at massive crossroads in their life, whether it be terminal illness, grieving the loss of a loved one, depression, anxiety, a cancer journey, and she runs this retreat for those sort of people. And so her talk was inspirational about finding your way back to yourself and what really matters in life, and how the last 3 years has brought so many people to that point. Previous guest speaker for our autumn harvest dinner was Professor Gigi Foster. So she wrote The Great COVID Panic. She's a professor of economics at the University of New South Wales. And once again, Neil, one of our coordinating members, has a working relationship with Gigi, and she was delighted to come and speak to us. And that was just, that was an amazing night. And it opens up all sorts of connections, ongoing connections that our group, you know, continues to benefit from, and to share amongst the greater community. So harvest dinners, film nights, then workshops with our members. So one of our members who's with us tonight on screen, Maria, she has hosted a beautiful workshop for us most recently this year, where she worked with another couple of group members to present a night all about flower essence alchemy. We have, you know, some really talented people within our network, and then we followed that off by an inner dance session, which is a sound journey meditation. So 3 of our members that night got to do a workshop for us and show us what their business was, and incorporate that with the group. So that's lovely, and we've done a number of those. We've done some lovely ad hoc workshops. One evening we had a gin and weaving workshop. Once again, 2 members, one who is a talented basket weaver, so she got us all weaving, and then we have another member who has a distillery at his home, and is very interested in the use of that as a biofuel. So he's got 2 sort of elements of information. So we had a gin tasting, but we also had this really information-based talk, and that's just all about building sort of connection. We've also had workshops with outside speakers, a little bit similar to Kelly. You mentioned this Saturday you've got a first aid workshop. We've had a New South Wales lady by the name of Pat Collins, who's an amazing self-trained bush lady from the Hunter Valley region of New South Wales. And she came and made herbal remedies, a herbal first aid kit for us out of things that you can find in your garden and the wider environment. So that was an awesome day for 20 of us to actually make remedies, and we all went away with a herbal first aid kit. What else have we done? We our tours. I mentioned that Kelly came along with us on the regenerative farm tour up to Full Circle Farm. So for those who are based in New South Wales, Full Circle Farm are very much on our page. They're a very ethical family-owned farm who deliver directly to your door here in Sydney. So a wonderful resource. So all our members actually got to walk through the farm and have a real hands-on education of what regenerative agriculture is. In this case, a rotational grazing system over multi-species, and Farmer Shannon was able to explain that in a 2-hour period. So we hired a bus and took everyone up there. We used another of our group members to do the catering for the day, so we're supporting her business as well. So we just try and bring everyone together as much as we can. I've also conducted some local shopping tours. So we have a great market on the Northern Beaches that runs on a Friday, fresh food and produce market. But as is the case in all areas, you find not everyone is a farmer at those markets. There's a lot of middlemen who just buy from the big wholesale markets and then bring their stuff along. So as part of my work as a food coach, I run food shopping tours. So I've taken a few tours actually of our group members around the local markets, and that's been a wonderful way of us to build relationships with our more local farmers as well. So now our organic fruit and veg farmer at that market has, I'd say, 12 of our, maybe 15 of our members shop with him really regularly every week, and he knows our group. They just had their second child, this farmer, and we'll do a lovely card for him and we'll get together next week and support him. So we're building that local farm network, and that was very much part of our initial ideas. Kelly mentioned also the idea that we had some small groups running, and very early on, also take you through that process, as well as our workshops and films and whatnot. We've had probably three of our get-togethers have been what I would call sort of strategic days. So we're really lucky. Sarah, one of our coordinating members, is an amazing woman who, in her professional background, has done a lot of facilitation and has worked in big corporate organisations. So she's very, very familiar with doing this and getting the very best out of people. So she has run a couple of really amazing workshops for us, and that's formed, I guess it's part of how our group is formed. We do have a structure, even though we try and make it as flat as we can. We've got objectives and we've got goals that we always sort of try and relate everything back to. So that first visioning day, we asked everyone to envisage what they would like Avalon to look like by 2030, both visually and artistically. We got everyone with coloured pencils, and we got them drawing and thinking, and we played beautiful classical music for all that to happen. And then Kelly's got some images that we might have a look at a little bit later of that process. And then out of that, we put up, I think we had 20 different areas of focuses that the group could potentially work on. Things like food and health, natural resources, first aid, security, communication, law, legal structures. We put all those things up, and ironically this day occurred on the federal election day last year. It was the 11th of May. So we had our own vote, and we all the group members came, and after the workshopping process, we all voted on what elements we wanted our group to focus their energy on, realizing we couldn't focus our energy on everything at once. And we came up with our top 4 votes for that year, and our number 1 vote was food. Everyone wanted to work on food. So from that was day 1. Our second planning day was, okay, we voted food, what does that actually look like? And we broke food down into 5 or 6 different areas, and out of that came the gardening group. So there was the food growing, backyard food, community garden, chickens. That was the joint sort of group. So that was our food growing group. We had a farmers network group, which obviously I've chatted about our farms and our link with the farmers. So that's what we were hoping to achieve there. We had a food preservation and bulk buying group, a foraging and bush tucker group, and a medicinal herbs group. So 5 different groups that we had running initially, and we kept them running for the whole, for the remainder of the year. With limited practical success. It was a really beautiful process, and I don't think we would do it any differently if we had to do it over again. But what we found 12 months down the track is because there was probably 30 people coming to each meeting, 35 people, but not the same people. Sometimes people wouldn't have to miss a meeting, so they wouldn't come until the following one. We lacked groundswell and momentum for actually achieving the practical tasks that each group wanted to achieve. So that saw us, the 3rd strategic day we had was at the beginning of this year. We said, okay, that's what we did last year. Let's throw everything up in the air, look at it again, vote again. Let's talk about how we actually are working. And at that point, the group collectively decided that we were spreading our talents too thin. We spread too thin. We're over 5 groups. Let's push it all back together into one sort of group of food. It's been a work in progress, and it's sort of not right or wrong. It's just the way it's happened. So we did have people looking after the gardening group, but we don't have key leaders as part of the group anymore. So I hope that answers all of that, Kelly.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll share screen if you like, and we can have a look at some of those things that we're talking about. So first of all, this is the 17th this month. Is that the one you're talking about?
So that's this year's one. We can start wherever, that's fine. So when we met our first meeting back in February this year, as I said, we sort of threw everything up into the air, and we said we did this exercise called a sailboat exercise. So once again, one of our key coordinating members, Neil, he's a graphic designer, and he's worked in education and designing curriculum for a lot of his professional life. So we draw on his skills beautifully, and he took us through this exercise called a sailboat exercise. It linked into 4 different segments, and you can see them there. So the positives being what has been successful in work, what has been the win in our sales for the past 12 months, what are the anchors holding us back, the beacons, what are we looking forward to, and what are the possible barriers. So you can obviously all see the screen there, but the success that, and it's the same as when you hear people speak about the group, the real success in that first 12 months was building our connections and our relationships. And that happened through all that social interaction. Every time we meet, there's always plenty of food. Everyone brings food. We bring big pots of hot food. So everyone always feels comfortable, like they're coming home, and it's very chatty and very relaxed. So that connections and relationship was what we had done really well in creating community. We'd started to learn some new skills, and everyone fed back to us that they really liked our well-organised, structured events. So that's a blessing. We love organising events, and we have created some really beautiful days. That's also possibly a bit of a thorn in our side, because creating these events takes a huge amount of time and effort, and how long we can continue that on for, I'm not quite sure. So it's a double-edged sword there. So that's what we did really well. What goals do we have for this next coming year, which is now 2023? So you can see there that we're looking at health is sort of a big issue for us. So how can we start to create our own health service, or pool our resources of who do we know who is in alternative healthcare. Possibly local economy and currency, some sort of trading system. We all recognise we're starting to grow veggies or share our plants and seeds together, or our skills, but we don't have a forum yet for sharing those things. And I'm really excited that Kelly is going to be our guest at our next get together just in a couple of weeks. And Kelly's going to take us through, and together we're going to hopefully think tank on a platform to help us do that. We look at things like safe blood. How do we, is there such a thing? So we've got a nurse who's looking at that area for us, and some more skill sharing. So what held us back last year? It was resounding. Everyone put up the same message: not enough time, we're time poor. I'm sure everyone here is the same. We find ourselves sort of navigating two worlds. We have our regular world where everything is as it's been. We have our work, our family. So to that point, that just continues on. And then we're trying to overlay learning all these new skills and making all these new connections on top of what we're doing. So time was a really big thing for us, and I'm sure it would be for most groups. We also found that those circles, as I mentioned, they were all the little food circles. They weren't as self-starting as we had hoped. We had hoped that each group, like the Farmers Network or the Community Gardens circle, would just allocate themselves a leader and a coordinator, and they would be self-starting, and that those circles would operate without us having to prompt and to organise each part of that process. But because of our anchors being time poor and people not being able to come to every gathering, that didn't happen. No one's fault, it's just life, and that's how it is. But that held us back from creating more practical moves forward than what we had hoped. And we also thought, once again, I'm sure it's something you can all relate to, there was a far less external pressure in what was happening in the greater environment. Suddenly that urgency for creating new systems, it had lessened. So everyone sort of felt the pressure was off, and that's okay. I can just do a little bit of that in my spare time. It doesn't have to become priority, front and center. And barriers that we see ahead. Once again, you'd all be looking at the same things: digital currency, digital IDs, 5G, lack of control over our amenities like water and power. So they're the things that we can sort of see ahead and try and plan for. So that was 2023. That was this year, February. So that's what we're working on. And then Kelly, you might have some of the earlier ones.
I really love the thinking that's gone behind that. That's just, it's really clever too.
And the way that came about, it's the community doing that. We give everyone post-it notes basically, and a pen, and they had to write 4 post-it notes, one for each element of that sailboat. And then everyone physically jumps up and puts their post-it note on the sticky part of the sailboat. So it's very, very, it's very analog. That's what we're trying to create to enhance that creative pathway. And then wonderful Neil is able to distill that information then into a graphic form that we can email out to everyone.
So clever. Love that. So this is your community building workshop. It's just beautiful.
So this was our election day workshop back in May 2022. I think we had around about 50, 60 people attend that day from my memory. And it was a really uplifting day. And I guess we were all a little bit brave. Our heart was sort of in our throats because we really didn't know what would come out of that day. We had our own expectations of what we hoped to achieve, but we were co-creating with everyone that was there. So you throw out the energy, and Sarah led us all so beautifully through the process, but we really didn't know what was going to come out of the day. The coordinated response that came out and the synergy between everyone's response was amazing. When they're creating their visual pictures and their words of what they wanted Avalon to be like in 2030. And we had some children actually participate in this day too, which was really lovely because their approach was also so fresh. So we broke into groups just on trestle tables. I think we had 8 groups. So what you're seeing is a grouping of each trestle table's work. And then a leader from each group then came up to the front of the church hall and explained an overview of what the vision that their group had for Avalon by 2030. And we had someone scribing all those comments down on our trusty whiteboard or flip chart. And we were able to give all that feedback back to the group. I have a big billiard table in my home, and after this event, we laid out everything over the big billiard table and therefore coordinated the themes of actually what came out of the process. And I think that Kelly's will come to a slide shortly that is the written distillation of what that was. As part of that day, we also asked everyone.
When you do this work, Nicole, doesn't it leave the people a sense of peace and of hope and of excitement for the future, not fear of what's going to happen by 2030?
That's so true.
This is cool.
Yeah, very, very uplifting. And then you can sort of come from that place of love when you're designing, as opposed to coming from a place of fear. Yeah, so here's the little distillation of those graphics when we put it all together into words. So I don't need to read through it all, you can see it. It was just a really, really beautiful picture. And that was very much the feeling of the day. And as I mentioned earlier on, our frustration, if that's the right word, is now in the length of time it is taking to take that vision into practical steps. But it was really affirming. I said to Kelly when I got onto the call tonight, the process of going through all this afternoon in order to present to you tonight was really, really affirming, because I haven't been back and looked at all this for quite some time, of our original goals and visions, and really then 2 years on, how many of the things we're doing now relate back to that. So we are getting there. And for anyone who wants to start a group, you know, I just encourage you. It's so rewarding for everyone involved, and it is so beautiful to walk down the street or go to the market on a Friday, and there's just loads of these beautiful faces, and everyone greets one another with a hug, because that's something we learned from another one of our sort of mentors as such, with Zach Bush, when we all went to see him speak in Sydney when he came in November last year. He greeted everyone with hugs, and hugs is like a commodity for him. And he explained to us about how hugging shares our biome, and that we are just upgrading everyone by sharing a hug, aside from the fact that it just feels really great. So to walk into your market or walk down the street and to get all these beautiful hugs, and just to know so many more people in a very real way, not just that surface level conversation. When you're talking about stuff like this for months on end, you really get to know one another very quickly at a level that really counts, like you would with a neighbour that you've had for many years. It's not just a surface level relationship. So to have that sort of connection, it's really beautiful. So these are the areas that we mentioned we gave people to vote on. So number 1 came up as food, number 2 is health, number 3, DIY everything, which is where our workshopping comes in, and number 4 was law. So they were our top 4 objectives for year 1.
Beautiful. And like you say, when you have all those, I'm going to go back to those hugs, and that really getting to know people on that level means that that, you know, there's a lot of trust there, and you could really start to rely on each other for when times get really tough. Now, one of the things that you told me about was your walking tree, how you organize people. Tell us about that.
That's right. So I guess that's designed for if and when things do get tough. Once again, Maria, who's here on our call tonight, this was actually, it came from an idea that Maria shared with us. She had, back in her children's primary school days, a phone tree, whereas if, you know, the bus came back from the excursion late, we didn't all have mobiles then. So parent 1 would ring parent 2 and 3, and parent 2 and 3 would ring parent 3, 4, 5, and 6, and very quickly the message would get down the tree. So we tasked ourselves with adopting that same concept for our group if times should get tough. So firstly, we agreed on a emergency meeting point, and the emergency meeting point for our group is our community garden space, which is in walking distance to many of our homes. And then we grouped everyone geographically into pods, sort of location pods, and it could be 8 people in a pod or 4 people. It just depends on how everyone's located. And then we put a leader in for each little pod, and that person is then in charge of the communication between that pod. We printed everything out, once again very analog, so everyone has the address and phone number of everyone in their pod, and it all comes in just a little very simple cardboard folder. So everyone's got their group folder that I've suggested gets kept in the 3rd drawer. And if things get tough, well, then you've got everyone's physical address, and you can walk to their home. You've got the address of the emergency meeting point, and you've got everyone's phone number. So that's, you know, a very analog way of us coordinating our group.
Yeah, that's so clever. I talk about these things all the time, you know, what to do. You're having your emergency plan, having your community, having your garden, the food. And so, you know, you're really ahead of the game, and all those beautiful workshops that you have. Is there any questions coming from people who are in the audience tonight? Is there anything you'd like to ask Nicole? Has anyone had ideas of doing this yourself and had wondered how do you get started? I mean, it's just lovely to hear your story and how it's just come about so beautifully, and using the skills that's in your group. You know, you've just really brought out of each other those skills that might have been for business or for the workplace, and now they're being utilized in a really holistic way to nurture each other.
We call them our hidden gems. We say we have lots of hidden gems in our midst, and as we get to know people better, those hidden gems come out of the woodwork. You know, people who you wouldn't have known what they've done or what other skills they have. So it's been beautiful.
Yeah. Sandy, jump off mute.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Kelly, for bringing Nicole onto this Zoom. I really am inspired by what you've created, and in the scheme of things, in really a short time. I just want to congratulate you all, because it's been hard times, and you've fitted this in. One of the things that I've been wanting, I live in North Queensland, so obviously the gardens are a little bit different, but I've been very much thinking about, and in response to Kelly's workshop this weekend, it's like, I want to do that up here. I want to, herbal first aid course up here. And so I would love to get some kind of guidance regarding that, because I mean, I do have a bit of a background, but I'm not an expert in this. And it's like, okay, how do we do this? And is there a template that we can sort of stamp out, but it can be modified in each area about what you can do? I'm just wondering whether we've got to start from scratch, or whether it's something that we can share,
Well, we were lucky enough to outsource actually that workshop to, she wasn't a community member who ran that workshop for us, but she was known by a community member. So she was a local herbalist. Her name was Pat Collins, so I can give Kelly the link, but obviously she's not local to you. So I'm really happy to, maybe I can talk about it now, but it's quite detailed. I could run you through exactly, what she did for us. But she had a huge amount of equipment that she brought with her, and it's very much part of her job, this lady. She has a practice that she runs herself in quite a remote area, and she runs workshops like this all the time. So her and her dear husband came down with a car packed literally to the rafters with equipment and books and plants and all sorts of things. And it was a frenetic day. We all broke up into groups and it was just full on, but I'm sure you could simplify it. You could simplify it right down. We actually created, I think 20 different remedies on the day because we all split into groups. So not every person created each remedy. We split into groups, and I just created one remedy with one other lady that day. And then we shared at the end of the day the compilation of what we had done. So yeah, happy to speak to you a little bit more about that later if you like, and I can give you Pat's number. And I imagine she's that type of giving woman who would be able to suggest someone in your local area or share with you how you could do it.
Thank you so much. That's just wonderful. I just love what you're doing, and it's very inspiring. So thanks very much. I would love to learn more.
Pleasure. We've had plenty of glitches and failures too. It's not all roses, so feel free to ask about that too.
Pat Collins is quite famous in her own right. She's a little bit like a Barbara O'Neill, and so you could reach out to her on her website. And I don't know if she does Zoom. I think she does a lot of in-person events, but I've inquired with her and had a chat with her about getting on her on one of our calls or doing an event for us down here. So do follow that up. Andrew has a question.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
I like what you've done there. Your documenting process is very good, and it's it's a problem that all the groups are coming across. The challenges of the sense of urgency going away. So the people, it's a battle of prioritizing time. And because everybody's putting it on top of what their work, if the sense of urgency is gone, that the need to do something on top of drops off. So that is a problem we all face. And then there's the opposite extreme where people are so fixated on the problems that they're like continuously on the internet looking at everything that's going wrong.
That's right.
Where they could be involved in these groups actually doing something practical.
Correct.
So it's like the two polar opposites on that. So it's people who feel sort of overwhelmed trying to do, but maybe if we can sort of break it down into a little task that people can do towards a bigger program, so they're not like a small doable size thing that they can do, but it's part of a bigger program. So that might be able to, so can move. The problem is trying to move forward all the time. You've built a group through the social, and then like, how do we move forwards and actually achieve stuff? That's the battle that we all face.
Yeah.
So
yes, it is, Andrew. You're absolutely right. And whenever we can, we've had some wonderful help with people stepping up for things like that message tree that I just explained to you. One of our group members sort of said, oh, look, I'm really quite good on the computer and at doing stuff like that. So she mapped all that for us on Google Maps and printed it all out and created that spreadsheet for us. We have a localization business directory as well, which is a printed resource, once again, with all our local like-minded businesses so we can encourage trade. And once again, another group member said, oh, look, I'm really handy on that sort of stuff. I'll take that on. So as much as we can, it's a learning process for the four of us too. I guess we're used to sort of organising things, and we have to sort of very consciously not be a barrier to people taking stuff on, because it's so important that everyone takes stuff on and plays their little part.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing that you say, Andrew, that, if people feel like the pressure is off. I actually defined it for myself the other day. It's that when do people feel like the pressure is on is when people are not allowed to travel. Have you found that? It's like, okay, but now we're back to travel again. It must mean things have gone back to normal because people are allowed to travel. But really the pressure is as constant. It's just that people are traveling. People have gotten it. Some people have gotten jobs back or new jobs or created things. There is a different vibe in the air this year than there was last year, for sure. People very, very busy, but also so much more going on. You know, before it was just the vaccines. Now it's the you know, you've got the weather, and you've got the you know, the different laws that are changing every other day. There's a new law, and there's, you know, and we're coming into fire season, which will be a whole new challenge. There's so many things that people are needing to, little fires that they need to put out here and there in their own life, you know. And so yeah, it's a little bit to say that we don't have the pressure on it. I think that's the difference is people just want to relax and travel. And if you can travel, then it's like life is back to normal. But yeah, now is the time, you know. I keep saying is now, while it seems to be like winter is a good lull time to prepare, because summer gets very volatile and we're hearing little rumors of things that could happen over the next 6 months. And so I always tell people, you know, to stay on their toes and don't get too complacent. You know, now's the time that we can get together and do it in a fun way. I never like to scare people, because I think the more that we can do it in a fun way and do it learning, and not because we're living in fear, but because we want to create the kind of community that we want to see in the world. And that's why I love that vision board that you created, Nicole. It's like, wow, we're moving towards this, not because anyone tells us that we need to, but just because that's what we really love and we want to do it because we love being together. It's so nurturing, and it's the world that we want to create.
Yeah.
Any
And the
other
other thing
questions?
is,
Yes, go ahead, Andrew.
with the two, like, groups from different areas leveraging off each other, what we've learnt and what the other one's learnt, so we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel all the time. You know, if one's advanced in a certain area, they can pass that on, and the other group's advanced in the other area. So we don't have to cover each group doesn't have to cover the whole big spectrum of things, but we can all specialize in something and share that among the different groups, not just one group trying to cover the whole thing.
You're so right, Andrew, and that's what we're sort of doing tonight, I guess. And that was on our aims for this year, was to try and cross-pollinate with some other groups, and that's essentially what we're doing tonight with My Self Reliance. It's wonderful.
In the Telegram group, I posted the link to this meeting, and just before that I posted the link that was in the group earlier. It's about what's the title, Nicole? This community, something like it's the beautiful
what was it? Not my wonderful community.
Yes, something like that. And if you go back and have a look at that, it's a beautiful video.
It is.
That just shows what a group in America have done, in country America, Canada, sorry. And the smaller groups, the communications group, the medical group, the food group that they've created. Our amazing community.
Our amazing community, that was it.
So I recommend everyone go back and have a watch of that, because it's just gives you such a beautiful picture of like what we can be doing, and how when everyone steps up to the plate, then that's when the load gets lighter. You know, it's not up to Nicole and Neil and Vicky and Sarah to do all the work and just create all these lovely events for everyone just to show up to, because that's the easy part, right? Showing up to an event and looking like I'm part of the community. But when everyone steps up and says, here's the talent or skill that I have, and how can I contribute that? That's when it really creates that strength make things happen.
That's right. Yeah, it's a really worthwhile little listen, that video. I sort of took away from it that they meet really regularly. They meet every week, and at every meeting, someone in the group has a share. So it might be something really, really simple, like how to sew on a button, or preserve some lemons, or make a loaf of bread. It's something very simple, but they share amongst the group at every meeting, which is, you know, something we aspire to, I guess.
So good. And it's really like up to you and getting together with a friend and saying, hey, what can we do? What can we do in our area? And I love that that's how it got started, Nicole, is with you talking to Vicky and saying, what can we do? And, you know, just linking arms. And it might be, you know, starting off with, you know, the core group might be 3 or 4 or 5. And, you know, inviting others to participate in that. That's such a value. And I would say to anyone, oh, yeah, but what if I don't live near anyone else who's like-minded like myself? Well, I think I've got 2 answers for that. One is the more conversations we have, the more we'll start to find that there are a lot more like-minded people in our local area than what we maybe first thought, and a lot of people looking for answers. And the second is put it on your vision board to be in a like-minded community, and it will happen one way or the other. You know, either they'll come to you or you'll go to them. So it happens, isn't it?
Right.
Put out there the desire and make that desire strong enough, and it'll happen. And I say it like that. Put it on your vision board. But what I really mean is, you know, make that decision and move. Which is what, you know, our family are doing. We have to move, but that's another story. Any other questions for Nicole? Such a resource, wealth of knowledge. And I would just love what you've created there, Nicole. And anyone else in the group who from the Northern Beaches would like to share anything that you love about participating. I know we've got a few watching tonight. Marie's been a resource there.
Yeah, I'm part of the group that Nicole is talking about. It's just divine. I came from a community in Christchurch originally, and really missed that when I moved over to Sydney about 8 years ago. And so the whole developing of a community and coming together with like-minded people is just very nourishing. You know, just always feel good. I always come away from the events very grateful to be part of such a group and thoroughly enjoy it. Yeah, just thoroughly enjoy it. It's just so good for you. And I just watching on Netflix at the moment the Blue Zones, you know, with the centenarian, the high rates of those people that into their hundreds, and community and connections is just such a vital part for our health and well-being. So big advocate for what we're doing, and so grateful to be part of it. Yeah, really enjoy it. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks for sharing.
Marie is just talking about community and connection, and we have a little funny saying in our group that just sort of came about, that we have 3 C's. So we are community, connection, and cake. Because one of our group members, Rudy, he's a German gentleman, and he makes the best Black Forest cake. So there's always plenty of food and there's always cake. And when I was doing this preparation this afternoon, I thought, actually, I think it's 4 C's now. I think it's community, connection, cake, and clipboards. I think that's our 4th.
I love that. I love that. Oh, yeah, my favorite C's. Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm sure you'll feel uplifted hearing about that and inspired. Put an emoji in the chat if you feel inspired to want to have something like that in your own community, in your own neighborhood. You can do a reactions button.
And I should have said, Kelly, too, we were really inspired early on by a group up in Dorrigo, which is in the Northern Rivers area of New South Wales. And they had done some really amazing work, and Sarah got in contact with them and talked to the coordinator. And very sadly, after a huge amount of work, she was trying to do it on her own, and it just got too hard, and the entire thing fell away, and all she was left with was just a monthly newsletter that she could sort of keep it going. So we were very, we really took heed of what she said and the advice that she gave us, and that's why we've shared the load as much as we can so that we can keep it running. Yeah. So I guess I put that up for anyone else. If anyone else needs a hand in starting something up, please connect with us. Kelly's got an email address that I'm happy to share. And if, you know, there's a question that you've got in a way that we can help you start up your own little group, we'd be happy to do that.
Now you sent me some beautiful links that I'll put in the chat. And some of them that you talked about tonight, and I'll put it in the now let's see,
and I think some of those, Kelly, we call them our guiding lights. So they're people like Zach Bush and his not-for-profit Farmers Footprint, people like Helena Norberg Hodge and her organisation Local Futures, whose film we watched at our very first gathering. They're people who are just, they're our guiding lights. We actually had Helena, the lady behind the film, 12 months after we showed the film, we had her back for a live podcast with one of our group members who is an amazing interviewer. So we actually did that once again at my place. And Helena said to us all at that event, what you are creating is a lifeboat. You know, you are equipping people with a lifeboat. And that was just beautiful to hear that. So that's one of the the website addresses that you've got. They've been our leading lights. Yeah.
So you can write to Nicole at avalonfutures@proton.me. And you can connect your friend there, Sandy. Beautiful. Lovely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's been absolutely delightful, and I can't wait to join you for your next meeting on the 15th, Nicole. It's
wonderful.
Yeah, it's going to be fabulous. So
thank you, Nicole. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Paul and Seko. Lovely to see you. Barry and Shuri. We'll have to bring that into our local group too, all the wonderful things there. So thanks, Hanan and Mil, for getting on, and Jess. And
lovely
Cheryl.
to meet you all. Thank you so much.
And join us next Tuesday, because on our chat next Tuesday, we actually have a man who is a technology whiz. Now, this is one of the hardest areas to find experts in when you want to change over your computer and all that information that's on your computer and move it over to the next one. You know how our technology moves so rapidly and everything becomes old within 2 years, and you're having to update all this technology. How do you do that safely? How do you do that without having to give everything over to Google? And then it's all your information is in the cloud, and you're wanting to keep your own footprint a little bit private. How does that happen? Well, stay tuned for next Tuesday and we'll find out all about that. So we'll see you all again on our Tuesday night Corinda Community Connections. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.